For our notes today, what we are working on is we are doing more quadratic word problems. So this stuff up here, we've already been through every single time we do a word problem. Determine your unknowns. Those are your let statements. You want to write your equation, solve the quadratic equation. Sometimes you can factor. Sometimes factoring doesn't work, so you have to do your quadratic formula. Then you want to check your answers, because remember, sometimes both answers you get don't work, so you have to end up rejecting one of them. And then always make sure you go back and you answered what is actually being asked. So let's take a look at this. We have hikers Mario and Evan start out at the same point. Mario walks due north for X miles. So here's north. They started here. Here's north. So that's my X. In the same amount of time, Evan, going east, walks 1 mile further than Mario. So here's Evan. He's Mario, which is X plus 1 more. When they stop, the distance between the hikers is 2 miles more than the distance walked by Mario. So that means this distance here, where Mario is and where Evan is Mario's distance plus 2. They want to know how far did each of the hikers walk. So what we have to pay in mind is the shape we have here is we have a triangle, and it's a right triangle. That's a 90-degree angle right there. So whenever we have a right triangle and you're trying to find something involving all three sides, that's our Pythagorean theorem that we talked about a couple of units ago. So our a squared plus our b squared equals c squared. So then we'll plug in our numbers, or in this case, our letters and our numbers. So x squared plus x plus 1 squared plus x plus 2 squared, or equals x plus 2 squared. Keeping in mind that when you square something, it means it's that thing times itself. So I've got to write these two binomials out twice. And now let's go ahead and multiply that out. X times x gives me x squared. X times 1 is x. 1 times x is x. 1 times 1 is 1. Alright, now I'll multiply this one over here on the right side. X times x is x squared. X times 2 is 2x. 2 times x is 2x. And then I get a 4. So combining all my like terms over here on the left, I'd get a 2x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals x squared plus 4x plus 4. So now what we have to do is we have to get a 0, because we've got these quadratic terms. We got these terms to the x power. We need to have everything over to one side and then a big fat 0 over on the other side. So I'm going to subtract this x squared, subtract my 4x, and subtract my 4. So when we do that, bring down my equal sign, that cancels, that cancels, that cancels. There's our 0 that we needed. So 2x squared minus x squared gives me x squared. 2 minus 4 gives me a negative 2x. And then 1 minus 4 gives us a negative 3. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try factoring this first, see if that works out for us. So this is a trinomial. It's got 3 terms. So I'm going to set up my 2 sets of parentheses, again, keeping my equal 0 there. To get x squared, it's x and x. This tells me that my signs are different. So I'm going to have 1 positive, 1 negative. And so I'm thinking about, okay, what multiplies to give me 3? I only got one option, 1 times 3. So let me try it. Let me see if I get my middle term of negative 2x. So when I multiply my little smile, I get a 1x. Big smile gives me a negative 3x. 1 minus 3 gives me a negative 2x. So that is factored correctly, which is good. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase these lines for a second. So I'm going to draw my line down the middle, set this equal to 0, set this side equal to 0, and then finish solving. So subtract my 1, I get x equals -1. And my 3, x equals 3. All right, so I got my two answers. I need to see if both these answers are going to work. So if I look back at the problem, they want us to figure out how far did each hiker walk. So now if I go back and I look at my two answers, a hiker can't walk a negative number of miles. So this one we reject. So therefore we're going to keep x equals 3. And if we go back up here, this guy, who was Mario, is the one who walked x miles. So Mario walked 3 miles, comma. And then the other one, Evan, he walked x, which we've now determined to be 3 plus 1. So 3 plus 1 means he walked 4 miles. So, and Evan walked 4 miles. So that one problem was really putting a lot of things together. You had to, multiply everything out. You had to first remember your Pythagorean theorem, and then you had to, multiply these two things out. You had to do some factoring in there. So there was a lot of different pieces being brought together in that one problem. All right, let's take a look at our next one on the back. This one was a tough one. This one was actually right off the regions. So this is the kind of thing we can expect to see. We have a rectangular garden measuring 12 meters by 16 meters is to have a walkway installed around it with a width of x meters as shown in the diagram below. Together the walkway and the garden have an area of 396 square meters. That's important information. I'm going to underline that. So we have our we have our garden here. Our dimensions are written 16 by 12 meters. And then around it, they're building kind of a little walkway, kind of fencing in that garden around it. And we don't know how long that walkway is. Let's take a look at our first part of our question. Write an equation that can be used to find x, which is the width of the walkway. All right, so what we need to figure out first is, what would we use to represent the length of this side of the rectangle? So what we know is that from here to here is 12 meters. According to my little line over here, this part is x, and then down here is also x. So if I add these together, I have 2 x's plus 12. So that's what the width is going to be with the walkway, is 2x plus 12. So if I do the same thing for up here, so again, from here to here is 16. And then I have this little piece that's x, and I have this little piece that's x. So that whole thing is 2x plus 16. Now they told us that the area of the walkway and the garden together is 396 meters. So the walkway and the garden are those two new lengths and widths that we came up with. So if we multiply those two together and set it equal to 396, we would be able to find out our value of x. Next part, describe how your equation models the situation. Okay, this one's tricky. You kind of have to think about, well, what did we do first? First thing we did is we figured out our length and our width of the garden, including the walkway. So, I mean, we can write like little steps here. It's just we have to use words for this part. So, step 1, found length and width of garden plus walkway. So we put the two pieces together. We had the side of the garden, and then I added the two pieces of the walkway to it. I had this side of the garden, I added the two pieces of the walkway to it. So that was what we did for first step. Second step, we then multiplied the two sides together. And set equal to 396. There we go. We just described how our equation models the situation. Next part, they want us to determine and state the width of the walkway in meters. So that means they want us to take our equation that we wrote and actually solve it. So let's start some multiplying here. 2x times 2x gives me 4x squared. 2x times 12 gives us 24x. This gives me 32x. And then that 192. So combine my like terms. So 4x squared plus 56x plus 192 equals 396. Move this down a little bit more. Subtract my 396. So 4x squared plus 56x minus 204 equals a 0. So looking at this now, we're going to need some big numbers here. So a lot of people opt for your quadratic formula, which is a great option. So our A value would be a 4, B is a 56, C is negative 204. So remember our quadratic formula, x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug all my numbers in. So I'm going to have a negative 56 plus or minus 56 squared minus 4 times negative 204 all over 2 times 4. So now I'm going to type this whole thing into my calculator. Let's see what we get. So negative 56 plus square root 56 squared. 4 times negative 204 over 8. So one of my answers is 3. And then we'll go and it'll type in where we subtract the square root. And we get a negative 17. So this is where, you know, your calculator is going to be very, very handy for you. So again, we are determining the width of the walkway. So would I keep a 3 and a negative 17? Well, no, because we can't have negative 17 be the width of the walkway. So we're going to reject that one, which means the walkway is 3 meters.